A woman lives with her daughter, and her daughter says, Mom, I'm invited for Thanksgiving to the neighbor next door, but you're not. And the mother says, well, what am I supposed to do? And she says, well, try my brother. So then she calls her son, and the son is skiing in Switzerland or something, who knows where or what. He's not even celebrating Thanksgiving. And she's complaining about all this to her friend, and her friend says, tell me, if you had it to do all over again, would you have kids? And she says, yeah, sure, but not those two. This is a very good crowd. This is, I guess, I'm supposed to warming you up. Anyway, there was a town in Poland, a shtetl, and they had 2 girls of marriageable age, but there were no men to marry them to. So someone gets the bright idea, let's send away to the neighboring town for 2 yeshiva buchers, and we'll bring them over and marry off the girls. So that was the idea, and everything, and it was a great idea, except, I don't know, war, famine, whatever, hurricane, earthquake. Only one of the yeshiva buchers made it to the shtetl. And so then the families are fighting, which girl is he going to marry? So so they can't figure it out, and they can't figure it out, and they decide they're going to go to the rabbi and have him decide. So they go to the rabbi and they explain the situation to him, and they say, Rabbi, what should we do? Only one yeshiva bucher made it, and there's 2 single girls here. And the rabbi says, it's obvious. You take this yeshiva bucher and you divide them down the middle, and you give the right half to one girl and the left half to the other. And one of the mothers says, oh no, don't do that, you'll kill him. And the second mother says, I don't know, I think it's a good idea, go ahead. The rabbi points to the second mother and he says, that's the mother-in-law. I have to admit, how can I tell that joke? All right, anyway, an Arab family needs to put their grandfather in a nursing home. And I need a metaphor for that word. Oh, I've got. Okay. We have to vulgarize it a bit. The Arab family has to put their grandfather in a nursing home, and the only one available is Jewish. So they put him there, and after a week or so, they go and visit him, and they say, okay, grandfather, how do you like it? And he said, oh, this place is wonderful. They treat everyone with such respect. You came just in time for a dirty joke. They treat everyone with such respect. See, the doctor hasn't had a patient in 25 years, and still they refer to him as doctor. And the judge, there's a judge here, hasn't been in a courtroom in 30 years, and still they refer to him as Your Honor. And the lawyer, whatever, I can't remember the 3rd category. Anyway, and me, they refer to, what, you know the 3rd category? And they treat me with such respect. I haven't had sex for 25 years, and still they refer to me as that Arab. Okay.
And you're all going to enjoy it. And we have, for the first time, a ventriloquist who is going to knock your socks off. Let's put it that way. He's very, very good. So this time, I want to turn the program over to Ivan Sherman, master ventriloquist, who will just do it right.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, this is a monkey. It's a monkey, and monkeys are very primitive, very hard to understand. Monkeys are very, very self-indulgent. They only take care of themselves. They basically only do what they see other people doing. Monkey, you've heard of monkey see, monkey do, right? They don't do anything unless they see other people, doing it. And therefore, it's a monkey see, monkey do situation over here. Their communication skills are nil. You could try and train a monkey to say hello for 1,000 years. It'll never happen.
Hello.
You talk.
Yes, I talk. I'm a monkey. Of course I talk. I'm a monkey.
Okay, you're a monkey.
I'm a donkey. I'm a donkey.
Okay, you're a monkey, and therefore?
Therefore, wow, where am I?
You're in a comedy hour, I would say.
Wow. Look at, wow.
What's that?
My mating call.
Your mating call?
Yeah, she's gorgeous.
Who are you talking? It's not nice. What's wrong with you? You can't just talk about people like that. For all you know, she's married.
So?
What ain't so? She's married. You can't go out with her.
I'm a puppet.
Oh, okay. It doesn't matter. You still can't go out with her.
Who's your daddy?
Stop. It's not nice. Stop it. You have to be nice. What's wrong with you? You know, we were staying. Again, you're staring.
I can't blink.
It's still called staring.
Wow.
Okay, we have to go further. I was asked to be MC tonight.
I'm a monkey!
All right, doesn't matter.
A monkey!
And therefore, we're an MC. We know what MC stands for?
Yeah, my Cherie.
No. It's Master of Ceremonies.
Who is ceremonies?
It's a figure of speech. And therefore, we're going to introduce the next person, first person actually,
Who's that?
the rabbi.
The rabbi! The rabbi is here?
Yes, he is.
Oh, wow. Is he going to bless us?
No, he's going to tell some jokes.
That's what I meant.
No, okay, you have to be nice to him. He's a rabbi, he's a special rabbi. Rabbi Leerfeld is the Mordasher of this great shul, and he has an incredible sense of humor.
Okay, let's hear it for Rabbi Leerfeld!
My wife said to me tonight, she said, "Dear, can you take me to some place I haven't been in a long time?" I said, "Why not? How about the kitchen?" All right. Yeah. You know that part of my job is to, Baruch Hashem, Rabbi has many things to do. Just one or two jokes and a few other things I want to share with you. The yeshiva boys were read the shidduch, and they're getting ready to go to this town to meet these two lovely young ladies. And one of them got a little bit cold feet, so he stayed on home, and the other boy is on this train. He gets off in the town, and there are these two prospective mothers-in-law. They want him for their daughter. And this one says that he's for me, my daughter. Other one says, no, he's for me, he's for my daughter. And they're pulling him this way and that way, and they don't know what to do. So they go to the rabbi. After all, the rabbi is the chacham. He's to know what to do. And the rabbi is, these two prospective mothers-in-law are screaming, he's for me, no, he's for me, for my daughter, for my daughter. The rabbi says, we will invoke the wisdom of King Solomon. We will cut him in half. One says, don't do it, he's such a nice boy, leave him alone. Other one says, cut him in half. That's your mother-in-law. It's not that every show has a show bulletin. And I have some articles that came from show bulletins, and you know, in our show, by the way, where's Mr. Warren Byrne, our president? I want you to know that it's an honor having him in Maryland here tonight. He's such a, what can I tell you? To be a president of the show is a very difficult task, and we appreciate Warren very much, and we're here to make you happier tonight. All right, we have a show bulletin going on all the time, and sometimes mistakes occur. So I want to read you some of the mistakes that were found in some show bulletins. All right, here is number one. All right, mistake number, the show bulletin reads as follows. A bean dinner will be held on Wednesday evening in the community, and after the dinner, music will follow. All right, we'll think about that for a minute. All right, now. All right, now. Weight Watchers will meet 7 p.m. at the synagogue. Please use the large double doors. All right? Don't let worry kill you. Let your synagogue help. Remember in prayer the many who are sick of our congregation. We have now, the associate rabbi unveiled the synagogue's new fundraising campaign with this slogan, "I up my pledge, up yours." We're just beginning, just wait a few minutes. All right. It says over here, we like to announce the birth of David Weiss, the sin of the rabbi and his wife. All right. Now, why do Jewish women make wonderful parole officers? Because they never leave off the sentence. We have number one, my physician is here, Dr. Steve. Dr. Steve, welcome, welcome. Good to see you. So, now, a few wonderful ones, all right. The doctor came in. The doctor called Mrs. Lieberman and said, by the way, Mrs. Lieberman, your check bounced. To which she said, so did my arthritis. All right, a man calls his mother in Florida. A man calls his mother in Florida. He says, Mom, how are you feeling? She says, I lost 25 pounds. I lost 25 pounds. Why'd you lose 25 pounds, Mom? Because I'm standing by the phone waiting to hear your phone call. And Jewish women, of course, are wonderful when it comes down to putting on the guilt. All right? There was this man who was trying to prove to his friends, by the way, this is not true. He was trying to prove to his friends that blondes, women, any blondes? Oh, sorry. He's excluding present company. That blondes have no brains. We have some blondes here, so please, that excludes all the present company. So he brings 3 blondes into a room, and he wants to prove that they have no brains. So he shows them a picture of a man, and he says to blonde number 1, what do you notice about this man so different? Well, she said, he has 1 eye and 1 ear. Of course, she says, you dumb blonde, it's a profile. He calls the second blonde. Calls the second blonde. What do you think about this man? What do you think is so different about him? Well, he has 1 eye and 1 ear. Of course, how dumb can it be? It's a profile. Calls the third blonde and says, what do you think? She says, that man is wearing contact lenses.
oh gosh, what a brilliant woman. And he goes, and is it true? So sure enough, they go out and they check, and sure enough, she's wearing contact lenses. He said, how do you know you're wearing contact lenses? Well, you have one eye and one ear, so you must be wearing contact lenses. All right. All right. Now, I hope you're getting these. I know that. All right, now, let's go into a few more important. All right, are you ready now? All right. Junior comes home and says to his mother, tell me, Ma, what is fornication? So she says, I can't answer you. I can't answer you. Go to your father. She goes to her father. Dad, what is fornication? The father says, son, I really can't answer you. Go to your aunt. Goes to his aunt. Well, what is fornication, auntie? I can't answer you. Finally, the mother says, go to your grandmother. She'll tell you. Bubby, what's fornication? That's a brand new dress for another occasion. All right. All right. Now we are continuing over here. All right. I want to read you some juicy one-liners. Okay, here are some definitions. Definition number one. All right. A doctor is a person who kills your ills by pills and kills you by bills. Marriage is an agreement in which a man loses his bachelor degree and a woman gets her master's. Now, there's a question, the difference between men and women. I just want to read this for a second. Men are just happier people, number one. Number two, never get pregnant. Number three, you can wear a white t-shirt to a water park. Number four, you never have to drive to another gas station because this one isn't clean enough. A few other differences, or wrinkles add character. A wedding dress costs $5,000, tuxedo only $100. You can have the same mood all the time. This is true, by the way. Phone conversations are only 30 seconds. A 5-day vacation requires only one suitcase. Everything on your face stays, it's an original color. The same hairstyle lasts for years, even decades. You can play with toys all your life. Now, there's an argument. A woman has the last word in any argument. Anything a man says after that is the beginning of another argument. A woman worries about the future until she gets a husband. A man never worries about the future until he gets married. All right, here's another thing, all right? Now, this is very, very true. A man has 6 items in his bathroom. Toothbrush, toothpaste, some to shave with, a bar of soap, and a towel. The average number of items in a typical woman's bathroom is 337. I can attest to that, by the way. All right. A man wouldn't be able to identify any more than 20 of them. This is to the women who have a sense of humor and to the men who really enjoy reading it. Thank you very, very much. All right.
Uh-oh. You're in the doghouse.
Why?
I remembered something that you didn't. she goes. Happy birthday to your wife. There she is.
Oh, my God, yes, her birthday today. Yes. Yes.
Ah, you forgot, yeah? You're in the doghouse.
Okay, I'm not.
You like the couches?
Okay, stop it. Let's get to the next person.
Hey, you're cute.
Okay, leave her alone. The next person is. The next one is.
Yeah? I can't read that.
The next one is someone who's a winner, funniest amateur Jewish comedian contest in 2012 in New York City. She arranges comedy nights for Jewish day schools and synagogues.
And?
Her name is, everybody, Linda Landau. Here she is, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, yeah!
Well, I've never been introduced by a monkey before. Anyway, we had one American president who went to Cuba, and those of you who subscribe to the Miami Herald would know that it was President Coolidge. And the time that he went, prohibition was all over the United States, but there was no prohibition in Cuba. And apparently the press corps and the presidential group got kind of excited when they got to Cuba with all this liquor around, and it was one of the most inebriated presidential trips ever made. Anyway, they tell this story about President Coolidge, who was very, very uptight. He's on a tour of a chicken farm in Cuba, and the wife notices that the rooster is mounting the hen chickens, okay? And she says to the farmer, how often does he do that? And the farmer says, oh, he does that at least 12 times a day. So she says, please tell that to President Coolidge. So then President Coolidge overhears, and he says, tell me, is it with the same chicken each time? And the farmer says, of course not. And he says, tell that to Mrs. Coolidge. Miami Herald and Rod were on chickens. In my comedy group, somebody brought this in. Woman tending to chickens in her yard, attacked and robbed. And this is an actual Miami Herald. See what you're missing? Mimi Valdez was tending to her chickens before sunrise Monday when 3 men wearing ski masks and armed with weapons jumped her from behind, hit her in the head, and dragged her into the house and forced her to open up her safe and everything else. And they left carrying an undisclosed amount of jewelry, valuables, and whatever. Anyway, she was the only person in the house. And the important thing is that none of the chickens were injured. And there is another joke which we all tell. I go to a lot of comedy clubs, and the jokes that I hear are very nasty about mothers and wives and girlfriends and grandmothers, and very misogynistic. Does everybody understand the word misogynistic? Anybody not know the word misogynistic? Ask the woman next to you. Anyway, I specialize in anti-misogynistic jokes, or I did until recently, and I'll tell you what changed my mind. A couple are sitting on the sofa, and the husband turns to the wife and he says, oh, darling, you're so beautiful. Why did God make you so beautiful? And she says, so that you would love me, dear. And then he thinks a little bit, and then he says, but you're so stupid. Why did God make you so stupid? So that I would love you, dear. Two men are playing golf, and a funeral procession goes by. So one man drops his hands, drops his golf clubs, drops his hands, lowers his head, and stands by the side until the procession goes by. And the other man says, after the funeral procession has passed, the other man says, gee, I never knew you were so religious. What was that about? And he said, it was my wife. It was the least I could do. And Jeffrey Koppelman, who is usually one of our anchors at Comedy Night, unfortunately is not well, and he's in a hospital in Hollywood. And anyway, this joke is from Jeffrey. He tells it in the masculine version. I switched it around. A funeral party is on the way to the cemetery. It's a cold, icy, rainy night, and they loaded the coffin into the hearse, and the hearse is going along to the cemetery. And all of a sudden it hits a patch of ice, skids off the road, runs into a tree. The back of the hearse opens up, the coffin slides out, the lid pops up, and the man is sitting there. He's alive. So naturally, the burial was canceled. Anyway, as life goes on, and finally it doesn't, and we are several years later at the funeral of the same man, and they're getting ready to load the coffin into the hearse, and the wife goes to the funeral director and she says, please, drive carefully. I don't want to repeat what happened last time. There's another joke about the cemetery. A man is coming to pay respects to his parents or whatever, and he looks over and he sees this crying woman, decrying over a matzeva, and he goes over to her and he says, what's wrong? Who's buried here? Is it, God forbid, a child or... No, this is my husband's first wife. If only she had lived. A girl comes home and she tells her mother, I met a man just like Dad. She says, so what do you want from me? Sympathy? And this is a special for my daughter's friend, Polly, whose father is performing tonight, Hurdle. A couple is in bed, and all of a sudden, wait, I haven't told it yet. A couple is in bed, and all of a sudden, the husband puts his hand behind her head, and over across her shoulders, and up and down her legs, and in between her legs, and all of a sudden, then he turns over and turns on the TV. And she says, what are you doing? I was getting so excited. Why did you stop? And he said, I found the remote. I turned 77. I turned 77 this year, and I want to tell you that old age is a gift. First of all, it frequently brings deafness. I went to my doctor and he said, you really should get a hearing aid. I said, but my husband talks all the time. And he says, I hear that from a lot of my patients. Anyway, my daughter looks at me and she says, you're wearing that? And I said, oh, I'm so glad you like it. It's one of my favorite outfits. And anyway, a man goes to the doctor and he said, my wife, I think her hearing is going. And he said, well, try this test. He said, be in the room furthest from the kitchen when she's in the kitchen and ask her what you're having for dinner. So he goes into the den and he said, dear, what's for dinner? No answer. Then he goes into the living room, dear, what's for dinner? Goes to the dining room, dear, what's for dinner? Finally, he walks into the kitchen and he said, what's for dinner? She says, I told you 4 times, chicken. Anyway, my doctors are so glad to see me, and they made me promise that when I finally do leave this earth, that my next of kin will notify them so they can take my records away. This group is, wait, I have okay, a small tourist hotel is all aflutter over a marriage between a 95-year-old man and a 23-year-old girl, bride. And it's the night, it's the morning after the bridal night, and they are anxiously waiting to see if the groom makes it down the stairs in one piece. And they are surprised to see the groom coming down, and the bride, and they go to her and they said, what happened? And she said, well, he said he was saving it up for 75 years. I thought he meant his money. A couple are in bed. An elderly couple are in bed. He's trying to go to sleep, and his wife said, you don't hold my hand anymore when we go to sleep. So he takes her hand, and he tries to go to sleep. And she says, and you used to kiss me when we went to sleep. So he turns over, and he gives her a kiss, and then he turns over to go to sleep. And you used to bite my neck. So he looks at her and he gets up, gets out of the bed, goes into the bathroom. She says, what are you doing? He says, I went into the bathroom to get my teeth. Two women at a senior citizen are talking, and one says, oh, I have a date with Herman Klein next week. And the other one says, oh, he's an animal. He'll throw you on the bed and he'll rip your dress off. And she says, oh, thanks for warning me. I'll make sure I wear an old schmatte. Two Hasidim are on a motorcycle, and they are being followed by a cop who is dying to give them a ticket. And they don't do anything wrong. And he follows them and follows them. He has nothing better to do. He follows them. Finally, he stops them and he says, I don't know how you do it. I mean, you drove perfectly. You didn't make a single wrong thing, anything. How do you do it? And one of the Hasidim said, Hashem is with us. And he says, aha, 3 on a motorcycle. I got you. I have 3 rabbi jokes that I'm going to subject you to. A man buys a Maserati, and he goes to the Orthodox rabbi for a bracha. And the Orthodox rabbi says, what's a Maserati? So then he goes to the conservative rabbi, and the conservative rabbi knows what a Maserati is, but he doesn't know a bracha for a car. So he goes to the Reform rabbi, and the Reform rabbi knows everything about that car. It's how many miles, how long it takes to go from 0 to 2,000, 100, whatever, and how many cylinders, and how many this, and how many that, and they're talking about the car, and then the man says, well, you know, can you give me a bracha for the car? And the Reform rabbi says, what's a bracha? The shul president has invited the elderly rabbi for dinner. So while the president's wife is finishing the dinner, the rabbi is sitting out in the living room, and he's joined by the couple's youngest daughter. And he says to the little girl, that smells good. I wonder what we're having for dinner. And she says, goat. And he says, goat? How do you know? And she says, I heard my daddy say it's about time we had the old goat for dinner. A new doctor has joined a practice, an established practice, and one of the veteran docs has been enlisted to take him on house calls and show him the ropes. So they go to the first house call, and the woman is in bed, and she's complaining of a stomach ache. And the doctor drops his stethoscope, and he picks it up, and then he says, I think you're eating too much fresh fruit. I would lay off the fresh fruit for a while. And she says, you know, doctor, you're absolutely right. I have been eating a lot of fresh fruit, and I'll give it up. So as they leave, the younger doctor says, how did you make a diagnosis like that? And he said, very easy. When I dropped my stethoscope to pick it up, I looked in the trash can, and I saw it was loaded with banana peels and apple cores, and that's how I made that. So then they went to the next house, and the woman is complaining of severe constipation. So again, the veteran doctor drops his stethoscope, and he bends down to pick it up, and he says, you know, I think you're eating too much fast food. I would lay off the donuts and everything. And she says, you know, doctor, you're absolutely right, and I'll take your advice. And the young doctor says, how did you make that diagnosis? And he said, well, when I went to pick up my stethoscope, I saw the boxes of Krispy Kreme and Dunkin' Donuts under the bed. So then they said, okay, you take the third house. So the young doctor goes in, and the patient is complaining about no energy, very tired, worn out. And so he drops his stethoscope, and then he picks it up, and he says, I think you're doing too much work for the shul. And he said, you really should cut back a little bit on what you do for the synagogue. And she says, you know, you're right. I really spend all my time at the synagogue, and I really should cut back. So as they're leaving, the veteran doctor says to the new doc, how did you make that diagnosis? And he said, very simple. When I dropped my stethoscope. When I went to pick it up, I saw the rabbi under the bed. Anyway, I'm going to close with something that I got from
Can I request the two men with the car sale?
What?
The two men discussing the car sale?
I can't hear you.
I have a request. Two men discussing the car sale in shul.
You tell her.
That's my daughter.
I can't tell it. I don't know. Come on.
I can't hear you. Okay, that's your thing. All right, I have to do their favorite jokes tonight. A man goes to shul, and he says to his fellow worshiper, all right, my car broke down. I need a new car. You wouldn't know anybody who's selling a used car, would you? And the other man said, Nishka Redden Shabbos, but I might be selling a car. And the other first man says, well, Nishka Redden Shabbos, how much might you be asking for that car? And he says, well, Nishka Redden Shabbos, $2,000. And the first man says, Nishka Redden Shabbos, maybe you take $1,500. And he says, we'll talk about it later. So they go home and they come back for Mincha Marv, and he says, okay, I'll give you the $2,000 for the car. And he says, oh, sorry, I sold it during Musaf. Anyway, I heard this in my comedy group, and I thank Jerry for bringing me the story about the chickens and the woman who got robbed and all of these. Apparently on Hollywood Boulevard, there is a boardwalk. On Hollywood, there's a boardwalk. And at the end of the boardwalk, there's a mezuzah. And people walk to the mezuzah, and then they kiss the mezuzah, and they walk back. So an Italian guy and his wife see them doing this, and he says, why are you kissing a piece of wood? And he says, oh, don't you know that if you kiss this, you'll live forever? So the Italian guy goes to do it, and his wife says, no, dear, not you.
That's funny.
It's a wonderful audience. Any audience that laughs at my jokes is a wonderful audience.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they're supposed to stare. It's part of the show.
Wait. They're not staring at me. They're staring at you. To see if your mouth is moving.
All right.
This is not how it goes, ladies and gentlemen. There are times where he talks and he stops talking. And there are times when I stop talking. And the adult want to see where is that sound coming from. But don't look at you, sir. He's ugly.
Stop that.
You, sir, why are you staring at me? Does he understand English?
Okay, you're wasting our time. We have to go further now. We have to call somebody up.
Stop staring. He doesn't understand.
Okay, stop. Leave him alone.
Okay.
Here we go. Now we're going to call somebody who's very... Oh boy, you see that name? You see that name?
Oh, yes.
His name is Hurdle, aka David Howell. He performed all over New York, New Jersey, and Israel, and swears all the tales he tells actually happened to him. You can enjoy more of him on YouTube. All you do is type in Hurdle Israel Tour Parts 1 and 2. You will surely enjoy Hurdle. Here he is.
Hey! The rabbi's not going to admit it, but we're old friends. The other day I saw the rabbi in the street. He said, Hurdle, come on, do me a favor. It's a very important anniversary. I got to buy my wife a gift, and I don't know what to buy. So he takes me for, one of these milestone anniversaries. He takes me to CVS to buy her a gift, right? So he tells the lady, I want to buy my wife a very special anniversary. So she told me some perfume for $180 an ounce. He said, no, I want to see something a little cheaper. So she shows him something for $90 an ounce. He said, no, you don't understand. I want something cheaper. Then she shows him something for $40 an ounce. He said, you don't understand. I want to see something really cheap. So she hands him a mirror. So anyhow, the holidays are coming. Nobody's talking about Passover. I don't believe it, guys. All the women are going to be working like hell, and I'll talk about Passover. I got to tell you a story about Passover. In my house, we're Sephardic Jews. I don't know if there's any difference between Sephardim and Ashkenazim, but we have a custom or a part of the service is when you point to the matzah. You guys do that too? Matzah zu, and you point to the korban. When it comes to the maror, we have a tradition in my house for 45 years. The bitter herbs, I point to my wife. So we have on my table a woman's liberationist. One of these, she gets up and she tugs her belt and she said, if I were married to you, I'd put poison in your coffee. If I were married to you, I'd drink it. Anyhow, you're not a woman, I'm very crazy. You're all busy the last 2 days of Passover, getting ready. And I see my wife, God bless her, she's running after the garbage man. He said, am I too late for the garbage? He says, no, lady, jump right in. And this story is really true from London Times. They talked about a Jewish person being knighted. He was a great philanthropist, and it's a very formal ceremony. What's the ceremony? It's 4 or 5 sentences in Latin, and he memorized them verbally, and he studied them. Now it comes to his turn, and he puts the sword on him, and he forgets the words. So what does he say? Na nishtana laila hazeh. So the queen turns over to the advisor. Why is this night different than all the other nights? True story. Anyhow, talking about holidays, a few years ago the high holidays came early. And we're Syrian Jews, we live in Deal for the summer, Jersey, by the shore, and Brooklyn in the winter. So we have a custom, I don't know if you guys have the same custom, but we visit the departed ones between the holidays. So this time the holiday was still in Deal, New Jersey. So this guy, we went every morning with the rabbi. When he comes in, I don't know how to get to the cemetery from Deal. I know how to get there from Brooklyn. I said, a simple thing, use your navigation. So he comes back about 2 hours later, white like a ghost, hair standing up, spooked out of, where's the, tell me what happened, I'll get the rabbi. He said, no. I said, tell me what happened, I'll get the rabbi. He said, when I reached the gate to the cemetery, the navigation says, you have reached your final destination. Talking about the rabbi, not this rabbi. By the way, if he's going to do comedy, I'm going to do Torah, so we have a deal, right? Rabbi? I hope mine's better than, I mean, anyhow, in my class, we go every morning, 4:30 in the morning, and we daven before sunrise, and not, I mean, we study and then we daven before sunrise, and the rabbi knows I'm a comedian, and he likes to keep me moving the class along and keep them awake. So he's telling a story, a true story from the Gemara, how do you say it, Sanhedrin, about a great tzaddik that was put in the Roman prison, a very harsh prison, was vertical, can never lay down. But they gave him a conjugal visit with his wife, God bless him. And miracle, the rabbi's telling the story. The wife conceived vertically, which is biologically impossible. So he says, Hurdle, isn't that a wow? I said, Rabbi, what's the big deal? I have a friend of mine, his wife conceived. He wasn't even there. So anyhow, I had to go to my granddaughter in Israel was giving birth to a boy. My wife was there already, and I wanted to surprise her. And I got on the plane last minute, and I was just going to go. Nobody's going to know. And I took a plane, and I grabbed a pastrami sandwich, and they seat me next to a big Arab guy, fat guy, takes up 2 seats with the whole headdress and the whole thing. And anyhow, my stomach is squeezy. Plane takes off. He falls asleep. Where you going? Plane takes off, he falls asleep, and I threw up all over him. About an hour later, the guy gets up and I look at him and I said, I hope you're feeling better. You were taking pictures, that thanks a lot. You taking pictures from there? Oh! Anyhow, I gotta make some money out of this. So anyhow, at the same time, a very interesting plane, there was a rabbi and a priest sitting behind me, and the stewardess comes to the rabbi, Father, the rabbi, can I get you a drink? He said, I'd love to have a vodka counter. Now she goes to the priest, says, Father, how about you? Before I let alcohol pass these lips, I'd commit adultery first. The rabbi says, I didn't know you had a tradition. So now we land in Israel and there's a big commotion going on. They found a lost Gemara. Gemara, how do you say it? Gemara. And it's unbelievable how to build a house. And this rich guy found the way he can read the Gemara. He gets an Aramaic contractor, an Aramaic builder, and an Aramaic architect. And together they put the house together. And he gives the rabbi the kabod to put in the mezuzah, and he puts in, and the house falls down. Well, the guy says, Rabbi, how can it be? I followed the Gemara every step of the way, nail for nail, brick for brick, everything the same exactly the way Gemara said. How could it be? The rabbi strokes his beard, he says, funny, those 4 asked the same question. Inside jokes. So it's important commentary. I don't know if you guys down here in Florida get the Jewish press. Get that newspaper? Well, they had a feature article about 2 months ago about the 75th anniversary of their matchmaking service. Unbelievable article. The head story, they were telling great stories about the 75 years. One of them was about a rabbi and a wife had a 38-year-old son not married. So they called the head matchmaker, and he greets the people, and he takes profiles of the whole family, and spends 3-4 days with the young man himself, and 3 months later he comes up and he says, I found the perfect match. This lady is beautiful, she's religious, and bottom line, she's drop dead gorgeous. So the kid looks around and he says, is she good in bed? He says, some say yes, some say Relax, let me begin. So, I'm doing a party for Panamanians, you know, and the one listen was dancing around Panamanians. They don't care comedians, they're busy with, I stopped them all. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a story straight out of the newspaper today. There's a front page article in the New York Times about Panama. There hasn't been an article about Panama since Noriega. What was the article about? It was about an archaeological expedition to find the real birthplace of Jesus. And Panama was the first country ruled out. They couldn't find 3 wise men and a virgin in the whole country. True story. So my son, God bless him, is married to an Ashkenazi girl with her father. And sometimes it happens, not too often. I think I'm in a strange place, right? Anyhow, we're going over the Verrazano Bridge to look for a hall. So the Mukhatanam, what do you call them? In-laws, we call them Mukhatanams. He puts his hand in his pocket to pay the toll. I said, no, I pay the toll, you pay the wedding. So we get along very well. So my son was a white guy. When he was growing up, my son Ralphie's a rabbi. And when he was growing up, he had a very curious smile. And he comes to me and he asks his wife first, my wife, his mother, where does man come from? So my wife is a very educated woman, went to college, writes poetry and all that, and she tells him from the monkeys and the chimpanzees. So he wasn't too happy. 8 years old, he still was going to be a rabbi one day. About a day later, I said, Daddy, where does man come from? So I say, Hashem created Adam and Eve. Until today, he's a partner in every single creation. He said, but Mommy told me we come from the monkeys and the chimps. I said, yeah, that's her side of the family. So, my son, the same son, Elliot, wise guy. My son Ralphie went to Israel when he graduated high school, and my son Eddie went to Israel, and now my son Elliot wants to go to Israel when he graduated high school. But he never went to shul. I said, you're going to go to Israel, you don't even go to shul. He said, Daddy, I want to see it. You're going to see the light in Israel? Yeah, Dad. So finally he calmed, he goes to Israel, and sure enough, about a week later, he called me up. He said, Daddy, I need some money. I said, well, what are you talking about? You're the land of milk and honey. What are you talking about? He said, no. And he hangs up. About 2 weeks later, Daddy, I need money. I said, you're glad to learn. When you learn, you'll find it. About a month later, now he's coming to me. He said, Daddy, I need money. I said, you son of a gun, I put $500 in your tallest bag, you never opened it up. So, I learn every morning with the rabbi, and I have a story to tell about the rabbi, and my God bless him, he should have long life and good health. And we're talking about, my son is talking on the Shabbos table, and he's talking about every night about the Beit Torah, and I was not Shomden, it's one of those days, I'm about to Shabbat, and I used to chat on my food, and I never was really interested in what he was saying, and he asked the kids every week, his kids, my kids, I don't remember, what's the Perashah of the week? I never knew it. But one week I get a letter from the Coast Guard in Shul, that the Rabbi of our Shul was going to give the Beit Torah on the Perashah of the week. This week I got it made. Comes Friday, my hand is sweating. You know the feeling like? He says, "Hey, anybody? Yeah! I know the pair of shots." He said, "Daddy, you know? Yeah! What is it?" I said, "A shot shavua." What my story is. I was,
Breakfast in bed.
the other night I was feeling very, very, very romantic to my wife. I just got up to slide over to our side of the bed, and she said, "This is not what I need." I said, "That's all I got." So I went to my side of the bed. This must be the time for when a man gets older. He has to get some Viagra or some enhancement to it. So I buy the Viagra. I can't believe it. My big toe swelled up. And I couldn't get my shoes on. I swore off all these mechanical prescription aids and all. None of that. Until Sears came out. And Sears is my favorite store. I have batteries, I have chemo refill, everything from Sears. And they came out with a pill. And I took the pill, and you know what happened? The garage door went up. Yeah, have a great day, a great order.
Okay. Radha?
And we're gonna have two, I think there are two more, right? On this list. And someone really gets to the heart of it all. And someone who's very well known here.
Yeah?
Yes, he's very good. Is he? You want to say something?
Yeah, I know who he is.
How do you know who he is?
I take.
Okay, forget about it. Not going to say it now, I'm not in public.
Okay, can I say his name?
Yes, you can say his name.
Doctor!
Yeah, who is it?
Dr. Steve!
Yes, let's have a hand for Dr. Steve. Here he comes. One and only.
All right, good evening, everyone. My presence here this evening is a testimonial for Linda. I left town, I changed my phone number, she still tracked me down. You all have to suffer for it. All right, so, picture. Fine, sunny Sunday morning in good old Ireland. And Patty O'Malley comes out the front door of the church, and Father O'Reilly corners him and says, Patty, I thought for sure we'd lost you. It's at least a month since you've come to church. And Patty says, well, Father, you know, I lost my finest go-to-church hat, and I didn't want to come without a proper hat. So he says, oh, I see the hat is very beautifully perched on your head there, Patty. So what happened? And he says, well, you know, I remembered that Finnegan had a very nice hat, and I figured I'd just take his hat. So I snuck into church last week, and I was going to take the hat out of the cloakroom, and I heard your sermon about the Ten Commandments. And O'Reilly, the father, smiles. He goes, you heard me say thou shalt not steal, and you elected not to steal Finnegan's hat. He goes, nah, Father, I heard you say thou shalt not commit adultery, and I remembered where I left me hat. All right, young mother of teenagers is home. All day long, she's pretty much by herself. Her husband's at work. The kids are in school. And she decides she'd like to have a little bit of company. So she goes to the local pet shop. She says, you know, I'd like to buy a parrot. So he shows her some many fine parrots, some of them trained, some of them not. Most of them $2,000, $3,000. She sees off in the corner a parrot that's priced for $100. She goes, what's the story with the discount parrot? He says, well, you know, the parrot comes from a house of ill repute. And he has a tendency to be a little salty in the language. And so we figured to move the bird, we'd probably have to discount it. So he goes, oh, this is something I can afford. And I'm the mother of teenagers. I mean, come on, what could he possibly say? So she buys the parrot, she brings him home, she puts him on a perch. And she's busy making dinner, and in walks her teenage daughter, and the parrot's like, whoa, honey, look at that, wow! goes, well, I got it to keep me company. It used to be in a house of ill repute, so I got it at a discount. Oh, fine, no problem, I'll be upstairs. Girl goes upstairs, a few minutes later, in comes the teenage son. Whoa, look at this, we're gonna party tonight. A fine young man is here, we got some beautiful ladies. And he looks and he goes, Mom, what's the story? Well, you know, discount parrot, house of ill repute. Fine. Kid goes upstairs. About 20 minutes later, the door opened. In walks her husband, and the bird says, woo, good to see you again, Roger. Another parent of teenage children, he hears about this new invention. It's a truth robot. As soon as it hears a lie, it rolls over, gives the liar a whack in the head, makes him stop telling lies, only tell the truth. So he assembles this thing and he hides it in an alcove in the kitchen. And he and his wife are sitting down to dinner, and in walks their teenage son. He says, Bobby, I noticed you're a little bit late today. School ended at 3 o'clock. And Bobby says, oh yeah, Tim and I were over in the library. We were studying. Robot rolls out from behind the fridge. Wham! Right across the top of the head. Oh my God, what was that? That is our truth robot. You lied to me, and that thing is going to whack you in the head. Where were you? He goes, all right, I went over to Tim's, but we were studying. Wham! All right, I was at Tim's and we snuck one of his father's X-rated movies and we were watching it in the basement. The father starts to laugh and he goes, aha, you see, I got you. I never did stuff like that when I was your age. Wham! Right in the head. The father's like, oh my God, and the mother starts to laugh and says, oh, he sure as heck is your son. Wham! Right in the head. Depression era, big city, two very, very disheveled looking Jewish guys are walking down, very down on their luck, really starving. And they're walking past the Catholic church, and they see a big sign, and it says, convert to Catholicism, 25 bucks. They're arguing, they're going, well, should we, shouldn't we? You know how much money you could get, how much food you could buy with 25 bucks? It's a depression. I mean, we can eat for months with this kind of money. Finally, one of them says, you know what, I'm starving, I'm going to go and I'm going to do it. And the other one says, I'm going to wait here for you, because I'm just not ready to deal with that kind of thing. So the guy goes in, he's in there, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. Finally, he comes out, he's beaming, and he looks really happy. And then his buddy says, what happened? He goes, oh, I came in, and they talked to me about JC, and they gave me some wine, and they gave me a wafer. And he goes, but what about the 25 bucks? And the guy looks down and goes, all you Jews ever think about is money. All right. Anyway. On a similar note, okay. So a priest wants to go away for vacation, and he cannot get one of his brother clergymen to cover for him. So he's very good friends with the local rabbi. And he says, Rabbi, listen, why don't you sit in on a couple of confessions with me? And then you can do confession here in the church while I'm gone. Nobody has to know it's you. You sit in a booth, they don't see you. And the rabbi's like, well, I don't know. Kids, come on, you'd really be doing me a favor. I can't get anybody to cover me. All right, fine, I'll sit in with you. So he's sitting in the booth, and you know, the first guy comes in, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. He says, what have you done, my son? Well, I've had carnal relations with 3 different women. Oh, you say 10 Hail Marys, and you will be forgiven. The kid goes out. The second one comes in, forgive me, Father, I have sinned. What have you done, my son? Carnal relations, 3 different women. Say 10 Hail Marys, and you will be forgiven. And the priest says to the rabbi, all right, now why don't you give it a shot? And the rabbi goes over, and the kid comes in, he goes, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. And he goes, well, what have you done, my son? And he said, well, I've had carnal relations with 1 woman. And the rabbi says, we're having a special. All right. Anyway, so another rabbi in a small synagogue somewhere in rural Georgia is an absolute golf fanatic. And he's always wanted to golf at Augusta. and he's never been able to get a golf date. One day his buddy calls him up and says, "We got you a date. It's a beautiful day. You're gonna be the first foursome to tee off, and you're gonna be like the only guys out there on the course at Augusta, all by yourself." And the rabbi says, "Oh, wonderful, let me mark this down on my calendar. What day is it?" And he tells him the date. He goes, "Oh my God, it's Yom Kippur. What am I gonna do?" The guy says, "Listen, you're never gonna get another shot at Augusta. I know you can certainly get somebody to cover for you Yom Kippur." So he does. He finds a friend who's a retired rabbi, gets him to cover Yom Kippur, and he's off to Augusta to the national golf course. And up in heaven, Moses is standing there next to the celestial throne. He's going, "Dear Lord, Yom Kippur, golf? You gotta do something." God said, "Don't sweat, the fix is in, I know what to do." So, the rabbi's the first one out of the clubhouse. He's so excited, he tees up, and he whacks the ball, and it soars through the air 300 yards, bounces once on the green, and plunk right into the hole. His first hole at Augusta, hole in one. He's dancing around, he's happy, and Moses is going, "Hey, dear Lord, that's a punishment?" And God says, "Hey, who's he gonna tell?" All right, so a friend of mine once went out with his father and his son. Not Jewish people. They went to a local mall, and they went to the food court, and the three of them are having lunch together. And at the next table is a young man with the most outrageous head of hair. He's had it cut in a mohawk, and the mohawk has been dyed multiple different colors. And the old man is just like sitting there and staring as he's eating. And the son is just like on pins and needles. What the heck is his father going to say to this crazy looking guy? After a while, the young man realizes he's being stared at. You know, you get that feeling. And he looks around, he looks at the old man, he says, "What's the matter, old man? Have you never done anything crazy and wild in your life?" And the old man says, "You know, back in the 60s, under the influence of a lot of different drugs, they say I did some unspeakable things to a parrot during a fraternity hazing. I wonder if you're my son." All right, so now you've got to move backwards in history. All right, the Catholic Church is all powerful. Rome is at its most magnificent, and the Pope decides he's going to make a new bell for the cathedral in the Vatican. And he says to his aides, "You have to get me the finest bell maker in all of Rome to make me this bell." And they say, "No problem, Your Eminence. Moish, the bell maker, will be the guy." Moish? You're going to get me a Jewish bell maker? How is he going to know what to get for the Vatican? "Don't worry, Your Eminence. He's done many of our churches. He really is beyond compare." So they call in Moish. And Moshe is like, "Sure, I can make you a bell, no problem." He says, "No, you have to understand, Mr. Jewish bell maker. This bell is speaking to all of the Catholics in Rome. When it tolls, they must know that they are being summoned to come and pray at the Vatican. No problem, give me 3 months, it'll be ready." So he leaves, 3 months go by, they make this whole big convocation, he comes in, he's hanging up the bell, the Pope says, "It will work like I asked?" "No problem, Your Eminence, it's going to be perfect." He says, "Really? It's going to call to them? It's going to speak to them?" He said, "No problem, Your Eminence." So the Pope reaches over and grabs the pull cord, and he pulls, and the bell goes, "Goyim, goyim, goyim." All right, I usually try not to tell blonde jokes, but I did hear a couple that I thought were a little above the usual. So I hope the ladies of lighter hair in the audience will forgive me. I really don't like doing these, but these were cute. All right, so the first one, this blonde lady comes into a very high-end shoe store. And she says, I'd like to take a look at a pair of alligator shoes. So the salesman pulls out the alligator shoes, and she looks, and she says, they're beautiful. How much are they? And he says, $3,000. She goes, are you out of your mind? I could kill the alligator myself and get the shoes for that kind of money. The salesman says, give it your best shot, lady, go for it. So she stalks out of the store. He goes through the rest of his afternoon, and then, as fate would have it, he has to take a trip across Alligator Alley to meet somebody on the other side in Tampa. And as he's driving along, he sees this blonde lady coming out of the brush. And she goes to her car, and she picks up a big baseball bat, and he's saying to himself, it can't be. She couldn't possibly. But he pulls off because now his curiosity is just totally overwhelming. And he sneaks up through the brush and he sees her wading into the water and she whacks this mammoth alligator over the head. She drags his carcass out to the side. She rolls him over and she screams, another one that's barefoot? All right.
Tell the airplane joke.
Which one is that? I'm sorry, say it. Oh, that one. Okay. All right. You're making me do an extra blonde joke? All right, fine, fine. All right. So this very, very beautiful blonde lady comes on the airplane and plunks herself down in first class. The steward comes over and says, listen, ma'am, you know, I looked at your ticket as your boarding pass as you got on the plane. You're not a first-class passenger. You're a coach passenger. She goes, I am blonde and I am beautiful and I'm sitting right here. So the guy doesn't know what to do, so he goes and he gets a head stewardess. And he brings her over and she goes, listen, you know, you're not a first-class passenger. You should be sitting in the back. And she goes, well, I'm blonde and I'm beautiful and I'm going to sit right here. So neither one of them knows what to do. So they come up to the cockpit and they say, listen, we have an issue in first class. We have this lady that has plunked herself down and absolutely refuses to move. The pilot says, wait a minute, is she blonde? And they said, yes, how did you know that? He goes, don't worry, my wife is blonde, I'll handle this. So he goes over and he whispers in her ear and she immediately jumps up. She goes, oh, I had no idea. And she immediately ran back to coach. And they said, that's amazing. What did you say to her? I told her the front part of the plane didn't stop in New York. That's the one you wanted, right? All right, one more. I'm going to indulge myself. One more. A blonde cop pulls over a blonde driver and says to her, listen, I need your license and your registration. So she reaches into her wallet, she rummages around, she goes, here's the registration for the car, what does a license look like? And the blonde cop says to her, well, you know, it's a little rectangular thing and it has your picture on it. So she reaches in, she rummages around again and gets a compact mirror and she goes, oh, here's my picture. And the cop looks at it and says, well, you should have told me you were a police officer, I'll let you off with a warning. Oh, that one? I was sure somebody would have told that one. All right, anyway.
I forgot.
All right, well, all right. So we'll do our best to fill it in. Okay, so you got to picture a small village in old Europe, Eastern Europe, and never the town cow dies. And so they have to now go to Kiev, and they have to get a new cow. All right, because, you know, they don't have anything to give milk, and they would like to be able to breed. They have a bull, and they would like to be able to breed and have calves. They could have meat. So they're going around the different stalls. This one from Pinsk is 1,000 ruble, and this one from Kiev is 2,000 ruble. And here's a cow from Minsk, and the cow from Minsk is only 100 ruble. And they go, oh, 100 ruble, we can afford that. She looks healthy. They examine her. She looks wonderful. And they buy the cow from Minsk and they bring her back to the village. They put her out in the pasture with the bull. So the bull comes at her from the right side and the cow moves to the left side. The bull comes from the left side, and the cow moves to the right side. The bull comes from behind, the cow sits down. And this is going on over and over and over again. They can't get anywhere. And finally, somebody says, maybe we should ask the rabbi about this. The rabbi? He's a man of God. What does he know about breeding cows? The rabbi is a very wise man. There are many things in the Torah that he can teach us. We should ask him. So they go into the rabbi and they say, listen, rabbi, we got this cow. And, you know, we put it in with the bull, and the bull comes to the right, the cow goes left, the bull goes left, the cow goes right, the bull comes from behind, the cow sits down, and we're not getting anywhere. The rabbi strokes his beard, and he goes, this cow, it is from Minsk. And they look and they go, how could you know that? We never mentioned where the cow from. He says, my wife is from Minsk. All right. All right.
I said I didn't know. I told you I didn't know.
Exactly. I'm so happy what I heard so far.
So, and here he is. Ramon is going to introduce us. While you enjoy your food.
Thank you very much. I am from Cuba, okay? I make Cuban music with the mouth. You and Rubio. With the mouth, you know? But today I have no my equipment, but I want to make something that my grandparents teach me in my child time. Yeah? And this is some music from Nestor Corona. It's music from Barrow. In Cuba we have 4 types of music. The melody is the mother of the Cuban music. It's the music from Spain and French. The rhythm is the father of the Cuban music. It's the music coming from Africa. And the dara is the father of the music. It's the music that has more melody and little rhythm. And the sound is the popular contemporary Cuban music. Then what makes something from Ernesto Lacona is a vocal everything, okay? But the same more or less. It's a this is the bass. This is the piano, no? This is it. Something more extra. This is the one song from 1846.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ramon. Yes, thank you so much. Beautiful. You have to use your
Cha-cha-cha.
you have to use your mind a little bit. Beautiful. Very, very nice. Now we have somebody special.
Who was that?
We have somebody special here who's supposed to be a Rabbi Boaz Levy. Is going to get up and introduce some comedy. Am I wrong? Here he goes.
Yes! He's not on the list.
Special invitation. invitation only.
Thank you, everyone. When I heard they were doing a fundraiser, I wanted to do it in honor of Rabbi Lehrfield. Besides being a big Talmud Chacham, which I don't have to convince all of you, he does a lot of mitzvahs in secret, quietly in the community, and he should be commended for it. So, start off with a rabbi joke. There are the two elderly Jewish men. They hadn't seen each other in many years. Finally, they meet again, and one says to the other, I have 3 wonderful sons. I have such nachas. My first son became a doctor. He's got a nice medical practice. He's making good money. My second son, he became a lawyer. He's got a nice law practice. He's making good money. My third son, he became a rabbi. His friend says, a rabbi? What kind of job is that for a nice Jewish boy? Anyway. So since we were mentioning lawyers, okay. Any lawyer? What?
I said not easy to be funny.
Not easy to be funny. All right. 3 lawyers and 3 engineers are at a train station. The lawyers all buy tickets to get on the train. The 3 engineers, who are known to be thrifty, buy only 1 ticket for all 3 of them. One of the lawyers asked the group of engineers, how are all 3 of you going to travel with only 1 ticket? Watch and you'll see, answers one of the engineers. The train pulls up, all the people get on, the lawyers take their seats like everybody else. The 3 engineers all cram into one little restroom on the train. Did somebody tell this one already? Okay, train takes off, conductor's going around collecting all the tickets. The conductor knocks on the restroom where the 3 engineers are hiding, knocks on the door and says, ticket please. One of the engineers opens the door just a crack, hands out the ticket. Conductor takes the ticket and goes on his way. After 5 minutes, the engineers come out of the restroom, take their seats, and enjoy the rest of the train ride. The lawyers, I think they're so smart, marvel. They say, wow, that is a great way to save money. We're going to have to do that on the return trip home. They all get to their destination city, take care of their business, and it turns out that the 3 lawyers and the 3 engineers all end up at the train station to catch the return train home. The 3 lawyers buy 1 ticket for all 3 of them. The 3 engineers don't buy any ticket at all. One of the lawyers asked the group of engineers, how are all 3 of you going to travel with no ticket? Watch and you'll see, answer one of the engineers. Train pulls up, all the people get on, the 3 lawyers cram into one little restroom on the train. The 3 engineers cram into another little restroom on the train. Train takes off. One of the engineers sneaks out of his restroom, knocks on the restroom where the lawyers are and says, ticket please. All right. I think I'm starting to gauge this crowd. Okay. You like lawyer jokes. Okay. Some of you may know this one, but we'll try it anyway. A Chinese doctor moves into a new city, opens up his little shop, and he hangs out his sign. Chinese medicine, natural medicine, acupuncture. We cure most diseases for $20. If we cannot cure your disease, we pay you $100. A lawyer's passing by and notices the sign and figures, hey, here's a chance to make an easy $100. So the lawyer goes into the little shop and he tells the Chinese doctor, I have lost my entire sense of taste. I can't taste anything. Chinese doctor says, no problem. We have cure for this. He shouts to his assistant, bring me formula number 22. His assistant brings him a little bottle. The Chinese doctor takes a few drops of formula 22, sprinkles it on the lawyer's tongue. The lawyer goes, ooh, that's terrible. It tastes like kerosene. Chinese doctor says, you have your sense of taste back. That will be $20. So the lawyer pays the $20. He's all upset. He figures he's going to come back next week and really get that Chinese doctor. Comes back next week, he tells the Chinese doctor, I have lost my memory. I can't remember anything. Chinese doctor says, no problem. We have cure for this. He shouts to his assistant, bring me formula number 22. Lawyer says, Formula 22, that's the stuff that tastes like kerosene. Ah, you got your memory back. That will be $20. Lawyer again pays him, and he figures the third week he's going to come back and get that Chinese doctor. Comes back and tells the Chinese doctor, I've gone completely blind. I can hardly see anything. Chinese doctor says, sorry, for this we have no cure. Here is your $100. The lawyer takes the bill and says, this isn't a $100 bill, this is a $1 bill. Ah, you got your vision back. That will be $20. Fine, okay, Chinese jokes. All right. Two Jews are sitting in a kosher Chinese restaurant. One of them says to the other, I wonder if there are any Jews in China. The other one says, well, why don't we call over the Chinese waiter and ask him? So they call over the waiter and they say, tell us, are there any Chinese Jews? The waiter says, I go in kitchen and ask. Comes back out and says, no Chinese Jews. So they're marveling, no Chinese Jews, Jews everywhere in the world, and no Jews in China. Call that waiter back over. Let's see if he's really on the level. Are you sure there are no Chinese Jews? The waiter says, I go kitchen and ask again. Comes back out, he says, we have apple juice, orange juice, cranberry juice, grape juice, but no Chinese juice. Okay. While we're on the topic, Chinese lady goes into an eye doctor, and after examining her, the doctor says, Madam, you have a cataract. She says, I don't have a cataract, I have a wrinkle. A wrinkle. Okay, fine. I can't, okay. Four nuns are sitting in a restaurant. Three of them are the sweetest ladies you can imagine, what you'd expect a nun to be. But the fourth one is a nasty, racist anti-Semite. The racist nun says to the other three nuns, I got a couple weeks vacation time. Where do you think I ought to go? The first nice nun speaks up. She says, why don't you go visit New York City, the Big Apple, see all the interesting tourist sites and the big buildings? But the racist nun says, nah, too many Jews there. The second nice nun speaks up. She says, why don't you go visit Miami, get some sun, nice weather, relaxation? But the racist nun says, nah, too many Jews there too. The third nice nun speaks up. She says, why don't you go visit the Holy Land? It's every nun's dream to visit the holy sites over there. But again, the racist nun says, nah, too many Jews there too. There's a Jewish guy sitting at the table right next to him. He couldn't help but overhear this entire conversation. He turns to the racist nun and he says, why don't you go to hell? There's no Jews there. Okay. Two hunters are in the woods. All of a sudden, one of them collapses. He turns blue in the face. His eyes roll back in his head. He doesn't seem to be breathing. His friend, in a panic, pulls out his cell phone and calls 911 emergency. Tells the operator, I think my friend is dead. What should I do? The operator says in a very calm voice, just stay calm. I can help. First, let's make sure he's really dead. There's a silence on the phone line, followed by a loud gunshot. And the hunter gets on and says, okay, now what? You didn't expect that one, all right. All right, there's this, for anybody who doesn't know what a WASP is, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, unfortunately they're prejudiced against anybody who's not like them, some of them. Okay, so there's this WASPy girls' school in the countryside. Did somebody tell us one already? No? WASPy girls' school in the countryside. And they decide for the first time in the school's history, they're going to make a senior graduation prom dance. But they have a problem. It's an all-girls school. Who are the girls going to dance with? The principal comes up with a great idea. He gets on the phone and he calls to the army base down the road. The sergeant answers, and the principal asks to speak with the captain. The sergeant says, well, the captain's not here, sir, but I'll accommodate you if I can. The principal says, okay, well, I'm the principal from the girls' school down the road. We're making our first senior graduation prom dance. And I wanted to ask the captain if he could send over 50 nice young soldiers to dance with the girls. The sergeant said, well, I'll certainly relay that message to the captain for you, sir, and I'm sure he'll be able to accommodate. The principal says, thank you, and by the way, please ask the captain not to send over any Jews. The sergeant says, I'll certainly relay that message to the captain for you, sir. Well, the day of the prom dance arrives, and the principal and all the girls come out of the school to greet the valiant soldiers. And as the bus pulls up, the principal and all the girls go into a state of shock when 50 of the biggest, toughest African-American soldiers get off the bus. The sergeant is the biggest, toughest one of them all. He gets off the bus last. The principal, in a state of shock, goes over to the sergeant and says, Sergeant, I think there's been a mistake here. The sergeant says, no, sir. Ain't no mistakes. You see, I make mistakes, and maybe you make mistakes. But Captain Goldberg, he don't make no mistakes. What'd you say, that's an old one? Alrighty. Alright, there's a homeless Jewish man. He's walking across the street, gets hit by a bus. They take him to the best Catholic hospital in town. And they do all kinds of operations and procedures on him. They fix him all up. And after a couple of months, he's ready to leave the hospital. He goes down to the checkout desk, and there's a nun sitting at the desk. She says to him, sir, what type of insurance do you have? He says, I have nothing at all. She says, well, what method of payment would you like to use? Cash, credit card, checks? He says, I'm a poor man, I don't have anything. The nun says, well, sir, we've done millions of dollars worth of operations and procedures on you. You must have some living relatives that could help you. He says, no, my only living relative is my sister, and she converted, and she became a nun, and she's an old maid. The nun sitting at the desk gets very insulted, and she says, excuse me, sir, we nuns are not old maids. We're married to him. And she points to the crucifix on the wall. The guy says, oh, in that case, send the bill to my brother-in-law. Okay, I gotta cut it short. I don't know. All right. A CNN reporter, a BBC reporter, and an Israeli army commando get captured by terrorists. The terrorists tell each one of them, you can each have one last wish before we kill you. The BBC reporter says, for my last meal, I would like tea and crumpets. The terrorist says, fine, you'll get it. The CNN reporter says, for my last wish, when you execute me, I want you to do it on international television. The terrorist says, no problem. The Israeli army commando says, for my last wish, I want you to kick me in the tuchus. The lead terrorist says, that's what you want for your last wish? And the Israeli commando says, yes. The terrorist says, no problem, we'll start with you. And as hard as he can, he kicks the Israeli commando in the tuchus. The Israeli commando does a flip around, whips out an Uzi, he mows down all the terrorists. The CNN reporter and the BBC reporter are looking on in amazement, and they said to him, why didn't you just do that in the first place? The Israeli commando said, I didn't want you guys to be able to report that I instigated the violence.
There you go. Unexpected comedian there. Rabbi Levy, good going. Now we have two, they always say that the last are the best, right? No offense to the others. We have two great comedians coming up. The first one is our own Lenny Strelowitz. He's the funniest optometrist in town, in New Jersey at least. Specialist in contact lenses. This is his 4th appearance at Comedy Night. Here he is, Lenny!
going to, let's see if I get this to work. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes,
Yeah. I was going to speak for 2 hours. Thank you. I was going to speak for 2 hours tonight, but 90% of the jokes I was going to tell have been told. I may just tap dance my way out. I'll start off with a nice little Hamish story. Two guys meet at the park, two elderly gentlemen meet at the park, and they've been friends now for about 7 or 8 years. And every morning they meet, they bring some food for the pigeons, they feed the pigeons, they watch the squirrels scamper about. They talk about the people that are walking around. They talk about their family. They talk about politics. They just really, really enjoy themselves. And they've been doing this for years. One day, Max doesn't show up. Well, Sam wasn't too worried about it. He has an appointment. The next day, he doesn't show up again. The third day, Max doesn't show up. Now Sam's really concerned. What's going on with his friend? Unfortunately, while they're good friends, they don't know each other's last names. They don't have each other's phone numbers. They don't know anything really about each other except for the family and the fact that they enjoy meeting in the park and talking for a couple of hours. So a week goes by, 2 weeks go by. Now Sam is so worried about his friend. 3 weeks go by, he figures he went to meet his maker. A month goes by, Sam is walking to the park bench, and he sees Max sitting there feeding the pigeons. He runs over to him and he says, Max, I'm so happy to see you. Where have you been for the past month? He says, I'll tell you an interesting story. You know that coffee shop that we go to every once in a while? And there's this beautiful 21-year-old blonde. And sometimes there's a waitress, and sometimes we tease her. Well, last month I was over there, and I guess I must have said the wrong thing. She accused me of raping her. And the police were called, and they take me and they bring me over to jail. The judge looks at me and he says, this woman here is accusing you of raping her. How do you plead? He says, I thought about it. And I say, you know, I'm 92 years old. If people think that I raped this 21-year-old beauty, boy, I mean, how much better can I be? You know, people would be envious of me that a man at my age can rape this young lady. So the judge says, so how do you plead? He says, I plead guilty. And the friend says, so he sent you to jail for 30 days for raping the woman? He said, no, he sent me to jail for 30 days for perjury. Charlie's an art dealer in New York. He has a beautiful, beautiful gallery in New York. He sells paintings and pictures and drawings for millions and millions of dollars. Gets a call from his lawyer. He said, look, I got some news for you. I got some bad news for you and some good news for you. He says, give me the good news because I've had such a day today, you just cannot believe what I've been going through. Give me the good news. He said, well, the good news is your wife, Annabelle, has 5 pictures that she paid $5,000 for, and she thinks they're worth between $10 and $15 million. He says, boy, he says, my wife is amazing. He said, she has a business head on her like nobody has. She can really turn a profit. That's really wonderful. He says, now I'm ready. Give me the bad news. The bad news is that those pictures are of you and your secretary. I'll get a little religious for you. Busted comes walking into the bar, and he's a full-fledged Hasidic guy. He's got a beard down to here. He's got payas. He's wearing a black long coat. For his hat, he's got a strommel. And on his shoulder, he has the most beautiful parrot you've ever seen. A parrot this big, multicolored. It's green, it's red, it's yellow, it's got blue in it, chartreuse in it. The bartender says, where'd you get that? The parrot says, in Brooklyn. There are thousands of them. Jake went into business when he was only 22 years old. And with God's help, he really, really made a lot of money. And as he's making money, he loved cars, so as he made some money, he bought himself an Audi. And then eventually, he bought himself a Lexus. And then eventually, he bought himself a Mercedes. And kind of hurry, after 30 years, he bought himself a Bentley. And he's saying to himself, you know, I've enjoyed these cars, but I've never had a sports car. I never had a convertible. I'm going out, I'm 75 years old, I'm going out and I'm going to buy myself a sports car convertible. Goes to the dealer, he buys himself a Corvette, the biggest, highest power Corvette there is. A gorgeous yellow convertible. Picks up the car, he's 2 blocks away from 95, the highway, because I'm going on the highway. Starts to go up the ramp, he guns it all the way down, and within 4 seconds he's going 65 miles an hour. Oh, this is such a pleasure. Why didn't I do this before? So he's driving at 65 miles an hour, and there's cars passing him by. I'm not going to let them pass me by. So he picks it up to 80 miles an hour, and he's really, really going, and he's enjoying it. The fresh air is in his face. The little hair he has is blowing in the wind. And he looks behind him in his rearview mirror, and there's a police car with the lights going. He says, I'll outrace him. So he picks it up to 90 miles an hour. And sure enough, he's gaining on the police car. He goes to 100, he goes to 110. Now he's at 120 miles an hour. The police car is so far behind him, and he's just enjoying it immensely. And he says to himself, Mr. Meshuggah, are you crazy? He's going to call the police up ahead, and the police are going to set up a roadblock. They're going to arrest me. I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. I better calm down. So he pulls over into the right lane and then pulls over onto the shoulder. 5 minutes later, the policeman finally catches up to him. He says, you know, you were going 120 miles an hour. Charlie says, yeah, I know I was going 120 miles an hour. Do you have any good reason why on I-95 you should be going 120 miles an hour? He says, yes. Yeah, and what's that? He said, well, 3 years ago, my wife ran off with a police trooper, and I thought you were bringing her back. So being that most of my jokes have been told, I'm going to tell you just a cute little joke. Teacher's talking to her 4th grade children, 10-year-old, and she says, you know, today we're going to talk about whales. And she proceeds to tell them all about whales, from the head to the tail, their digestive system, everything. And then she says, and while a whale has a very, very big mouth, its esophagus is tiny, very small. And so a whale cannot swallow a human. And little Sarah says, but Jonah was swallowed by a whale. And she said, the teacher says, I'm telling you, a whale cannot swallow a human. And Sarah says, well, one day when I go to heaven, I'm going to ask Jonah. And the teacher said, yeah, and what if Jonah goes to hell? And Sarah said, then you'll ask him. A fellow comes from Russia. He immigrates to the United States. He wants so badly to be an American citizen. He waits a period of time so that he can apply, but before that, he's taking English lessons. And the teacher says, Mr. Epstein, I'm going to give you a word, cultivate. I want you to spell the word cultivate, and then I want you to use cultivate in a sentence. So Mr. Epstein thinks for a minute, he says, cultivate, cultivate. I think it starts with a C, then a U, L, cultivate, a T-I-V-A-T-E, cultivate. Teacher says, excellent, you got that right. Now I've used the word cultivate in a sentence. When I first came to America, I was living in New York. It was winter. It was terrible. It was 20 degrees out. It was so windy. It was awful. The snow began to fall down. I'm waiting for our bus. I'm waiting 20 minutes for the bus. I decided it was too cold to wait. I took a taxi. The guy goes to the shul. It's the first time he's ever been to the shul. In fact, I think it was the Young Israel here in North Miami Beach. And the rabbi sees a new face, a stranger, at Shabbos. He comes off the bima and he says to the new person, he introduces himself and he says, you know, you're here for the first time, I'd like to give you an aliyah. You know what an aliyah is? Do you know the brokers? Of course I know what an aliyah is. Of course I know the brokers. Rabbi says, wonderful. What's your Jewish name? He says, Esther ben Abraham. The rabbi says, wait a minute, I want your Jewish name. He says, I told you, Esther ben Abraham. How can you have a woman's name, Esther? He says, very simple. We ran into financial problems, so now everything is my wife's name. I have a cute joke if I can pull this off. This is a cemetery, and it's the headstone. And I myself never was there where this headstone is, but I tell you, I did see a picture. Somebody sent me a picture of this headstone. And the headstone says, engraved in the headstone, here are 5 rules for men to follow for a happy life. Engraved number 1, you need to have a woman who helps around the house, cooks sometimes, keeps the house clean, and it's important that she has a job. Number 2, you want a woman that likes to laugh, makes you laugh, and when you tell a joke, she laughs. Number 3, you must have a woman who you can trust and doesn't lie to you. Number 4, you want a woman who is good to you and kind to you. And number 5, very, very important, these women should never meet each other. Because if they do, you'll be dead like me. Moshe is in a bar, and he has a glass of scotch in front of him, and he's looking at the bar. It's a double scotch. For those who think it's important, it's single malt scotch. And he has his yarmulke on, his kippah, and he's looking at the glass. And he gives a little swirl, and he's looking at it, hasn't touched it yet. And this biker, this big burly biker comes walking into the bar, goes right up next to Moshe, grabs a glass, drinks the whole thing down. And Moshe starts to cry. And the biker says, "What's the matter, Jew boy? Can't take it? Crying like a baby? What's your problem?" Moshe says, "I'll tell you what my problem is. I got to work this morning 10 minutes late. The owner was not in a good mood. He fired me right there on the spot for 10 minutes. I go to the desk, I take out the few things that I have, I put it in the bag. I go downstairs to my car. My car's not there, it was stolen. What makes it worse, I had no insurance on it. So now I don't have a car, I don't have a job, and I don't have the ability to buy a new car. So I take a taxi and I go home. In the taxi, I pay the taxi driver, but I forgot my wallet in the back seat. So I quickly called the taxi company, and they called the driver, and the driver said, "There's no wallet in the back seat." I go into the house, and there's my wife hugging and kissing the mailman. I'm so upset that that wasn't bad enough. My dog bites me in the leg. So I come here to the bar. I order a glass of scotch. I take some poison because I'm going to kill myself. And I open it up and I pour it into the scotch. And I'm shaking it a little bit, waiting for it to dissolve. Then you come in and you drink the scotch. But enough about me. Tell me, how's your day going? I have to confess to you that I had a phobia since I was 5 years old. I always felt that there was somebody underneath my bed. And even though every night my father and my mother and me, we would bend down and we would look underneath the bed, there was nobody there. They would say goodnight. I know as soon as they left, somebody was going to be crawling under that bed. And I just knew I could hardly sleep. My whole childhood was that way. My teenage years were that way. So I decided at 35 I was going to go see a psychiatrist. And I tell the psychiatrist my problem. The psychiatrist says, I can cure you. You come to my office 3 times a week for 1 year, and I will cure you of that problem with you thinking somebody's underneath your bed. So I said, how much do you charge? She says, I charge $200 a session. $200 a session times 3 is $600. A year, that's $30,000. I'll have to think about it. I see the psychiatrist at a party a month later. She says to me, I thought you were going to come so that I can cure you of your problem. He says, you want to know something funny? A bartender for $10 cured me. How could a bartender cure you? He says, I'm sitting at the bar. I order a drink for $10. He was a little slow at the bar. The bartender and I start talking, and I'm telling him about this problem that I have. So the bartender says, why don't you cut the legs off of the bed? So I did. Now there's nobody under the bed. I know the hour's late. I'm just going to tell you a couple of short, cute jokes. First, it wouldn't be right if I didn't tell a blonde joke, so I'm going to tell you a quick one. A blonde, a boyfriend and girlfriend are on West Dixie Highway, and they stopped in for a couple of slices of pizza. And when the guy goes in for the pizza, his girlfriend is walking around the stores out there looking in, and somebody jumps into the pickup truck and steals the pickup truck. And she goes running into the pizza place. She says, Zeke, somebody just stole your pickup truck. And he said, did you see who it was? No, but don't worry, I wrote down the license plate. Well, that's a blonde story, what can I tell? I'm going to tell you my last joke. And it's a quick one. The police station gets a call that there was a domestic violence in one of the apartments, and the person who called in heard a gunshot. So the sergeant calls the policeman who's in the neighborhood and says, listen, they heard a gunshot, go over to the apartment, see what's going on, but be careful because there was a gunshot. So he goes over to the apartment, and sure enough, there's a man dead right by the kitchen floor, and there's the wife standing there with the gun in her hand. And they said, the policeman said, what happened? She says, I washed the floor, I mopped the floor was wet, and he comes in here with his dirty shoes and steps on into the kitchen with his dirty shoes. So I shot him. The policeman calls the sergeant, said, here's what happened. The guy came home, his wife had mopped the kitchen floor. The floor was wet. He stepped on the floor with his dirty shoes, and she shot him. So he said, well, did you arrest her? He said, no, the floor's still wet. Oh. Thank you.
There you go, lady. One more. There's one more, real fast. Yeah, very quick. We can't let him out, we let him out. Is he ready? Is he ready yet? He is ready. And we're going to call the one and only Jeff Kalinsky, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff
Kalinsky. Something appalling, something for everyone accompanied tonight. Something with glory, something with clown, something for tension accompanied tonight. Hello people, how you doing tonight? Great. May Hashem bless you with health, wisdom, and joy. Every crowd has their own sense of humor, so I'm going to do the best I can. I was at the home Chaim Kessler for Shabbos. It was voracious. And there were these witnesses there. And they come to the front door. And I said, hello, how you doing? What? I saw the Bible of the Christian religion. I go, don't you excited? This is Shabbos. It's voracious. So what Hashem created the world? Don't you ever learn the Chumash? Do you ever learn the Bible? Oh yeah, we do it religiously. I said, that's the idea. Do it. So I said, be like the Torah. Try it. You'll like it. My friend comes to me, and I'm teaching classes in New York. And the Rebbe says, stop being so nice to the students. I said, what am I supposed to do? So he takes out a piece of wood. It's a 3x6. I call it the Board of Education. Rabbi Lairfield was giving a drasha on Yom Kippur in 2010. And he said, well, I'm doing this. I get this special positive feeling inside. I don't know how to describe it. I said, very simple. Good vibrations. I had to bring a picture in. You know what they say? Bach, Brahms, Beethoven, Beach Boys. You know the four Beach. Now we have an interesting story. I met this entertainer, and he said, I'm the most special person in the world. I created myself. I said, oh, that's great. That takes a big responsibility away from Hashem. I have friends from different types of situations. My friend was visiting here. He was born in Morocco. Nice man, he's a physician. So I said, Daniel, how's my favorite African American? I love this neighborhood. There's so much positivity and spirituality. I remember one time, there was somebody who needed a loan. And he comes to me and says, I need $3. I said, why? I said, I'm getting some soup. He comes the next day, he wants some soup. I found out later, he was selling the bowls of soup. I had no idea. Everybody's an entrepreneur of their own way. Then there was another time. We had a dog named Oscar. My father was very clean, like Felix. You ever see The Odd Couple? So I said, well, we got Felix, we need an Oscar. So I called him with my baby brother with fur. And you know, people spend time with their dogs. I was trying to teach him how to play chess. I went like this. So what was his move? I went like this. The problem is he didn't know how to say checkmate. How do you do that in Retriever? I never knew. I see people with different situations in life. I see people try hard, succeed. And I always wonder how they can be so successful. So they say to me, go give it a book, study, become the best you can be. It also helps if you have $1 million father, you know? Because when people do mitzvot, Hashem blesses them. And in this room, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank everybody for being so wonderful. You deserve respect and emulation. But if you don't mind, people say they want credit. I always ask for cash, you know what I mean? Like I was telling Linda, every person has their own style of humor. And I didn't know how to do this, so I asked to go last. And I see all these people who do an excellent job, and I'm so proud for all the things. But I was always told to do things in such a way, so I'm trying my best. So I hope you'll forgive me, this is the first time. And when I see my friend Eitan, I told him, you know what's interesting about him? He's a cardiologist. I said, you know what has in common with the transportation engineer? They both deal with bypasses. I speak to my friend who's a dentist. His wife's a computer programmer. You know what they have in common? They both deal with bytes. I met a geologist, and he married a baker. You know what they have in common? Rocks and rolls. I mean, different people have different ways of phrasing things. And when I go to different places, we discuss different topics. And they said, oh, you listen so well. I said, yeah. Linda's a friend of mine. I have another friend named Karen. She's an audiologist, so I wanted her to hear better. And I was thinking, what's the best way a husband and wife get along? If he says yes to you 99% of the time, that's what's perfect. The rest of the time he goes, I can't hear you. I was telling Rabbi Lairfield that the man is the king of the castle. The wife's the queen of the castle. If ever he does something wrong, she crowns him.
Then he used one of my jokes. What happened was, Shlomo Melech had 300 wives. He had 700 concubines. You know why that won't happen again? 1,000 mothers-in-law. But we have to realize relationships are important. We try to be nice to people, we try to get along, but some people are hard. So that's why my friend says, hey, what? I call it selective hearing. That's how you make friends and influence people. That's a shame that some people don't listen to that. Dale Carnegie was such a scholar. He worked hard, came to this country from Scotland, built up a company, worked diligently, and as Red Button said, he changed the world by having steel, and the steel led to the Industrial Revolution. And you know what? He got a dinner. We have Wellington, who won the war in Waterloo. He defeated Napoleon. He strove to be as best he could. He was a leader of his people. That's what we need to do. He got an entree. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and next year I'll do a better job, I promise. Okay, you gotta remember for trying, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Comedy Night was great because of you. Everything was a lot of fun. We hope next year, Rabbi, you're the best. We hope next year to give you an even better show.
Can you pay for it in advance?
One joke.
One more joke. Pay for it in advance. Make reservations now.
I have a nice, clean, quick joke. A chassid is on his way to be hosted at somebody's house for Shabbos. So he's driving there. It's kind of close to Shabbos. He's driving, and he runs out of gas. He thinks, oh my goodness, I don't have time to call AAA or get towed. And he remembers that he saw a gas station about a mile back. So he gets out of his car and he runs to the gas station. And he asks them if they have some gas. He says he needs a container of gas. And they say, you know, we're out of containers. We just sold our last one. I'm sorry. So he says, oh, I want to make it a 2. And then he thinks to himself, the only container he has a bottle of Manischewitz wine that he was supposed to give to his host. Says, okay, he runs back to his car, brings back the bottle, spills it out, fills it up with gas, goes back to his car, and he starts filling up his tank. So 2 goyim walk by, and they see this chassid filling up his gas tank, see what's going on. And one says to the other, if that car starts, I'm converting to Judaism.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming.